Hi. Hi, June.
Hi, Jean.
Uh,
How you doing?
good. Good.
Good.
How are you?
Okay. I'm okay. Yeah, busy. You know, you know
Yeah.
how life is.
Well, glad
So
you're
we'll see what.
joining.
Yeah,
Let's see how many people will
yeah,
join this.
yeah. We sent some stuff out, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
Friday afternoon.
Yeah. But I think that even if there are few people, the content that we could gain from it is something that can be
Yes.
use further, to both to inform me as well as
Sure.
I can put it on social media in terms of issues that, you know,
Right.
that we have talked about or
Right.
that of concern
Where
to
Where do you put it on? Do you put it on Twitter or do you put it on
well,
Facebook?
I do have a social media quote group of people working with me.
I
So
see.
it's on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Those are the three main ones.
Okay.
So before people get, oh, I don't want to say this because I'm recording this. So I won't say what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. I better be careful also because
That's right.
I
I'll
was
say it
I
on
was gonna raise
another
if
medium.
nobody else raised it, I was gonna raise something, but maybe I should keep my mouth.
Yeah. No, but well, if nobody else raises anything, then it would be nice if you started off, and
Yeah, yeah, I have a few
yeah, yeah. So that'll be
questions
good.
that, to
And
throw in.
uh,
Yes.
then Arthur, who's supposed to manage the administrative piece, has either an appointment or something, so he's going to be in a little bit late, but it should be okay because when we did it the last time, there wasn't um, too many, glitches. There weren't any.
No,
Yeah.
no,
So
no, it went pretty smoothly. I mean, he facilitated things though
yeah, yeah, he did.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I
So,
know I had communicated with him.
oh, you did. Good.
Yeah, by chat a couple of times, by the
Ah,
chat box.
yeah. Yes.
So there won't be anybody introducing the technology to people?
What do you mean introducing the technology?
Well, giving them an idea that if they want to chat or
Oh, I think I do say something to that
okay,
because
okay,
I do have it on my slides. Let me see if
okay.
now that I say that, uh, I'm trying to manage how, wait, let me manage my slides. Uh, ah, so I have like, whoops. So I have the rules and
Ah,
then, yeah,
good. Okay,
and
excellent.
then,
You
then
thought of everything.
yeah, I tried to. So I did have some consultation, with people who, you know, who
Right.
who is one who's a techie. So,
Ah, somebody's on.
yeah, let me.
This is Cynthia.
Oh, hi, Cynthia.
Hi, is that Jean?
Yes, this is Jean, and
Hi, Jean.
June Fader's on.
Hi,
Who?
Cynthia. I'm from New York.
Hi.
Hi.
Is it just the three of us right now?
Right
Yeah.
now. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah. So that if you
How
had
have the other talks been going?
what?
How have your other talks been going?
Yeah, they've been going well. We had a good science one, and
Yeah.
Excellent.
the and then we have
Was
three more scheduled. We just had someone, Ian Wallace, signed on, but
yep.
Uh-huh.
he is muted. So
Right.
I let's see. Let me
He
just
muted himself,
yeah,
I
because
think.
I don't think I muted everybody, but just
I saw that. He may not realize he's
oh,
muted.
so I think I can unmute him. Hi, just wanted
Uh,
to
I don't know how to,
mute
I,
you, Ian. I unmuted you. I don't know if you
oh,
muted
he
yourself.
unmuted himself.
No, I did that.
Oh, you did that.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Oh,
So, I just wanted to, Ian, just welcome you to this Let's Talk series. Oh, he muted himself. Oh, wait, no, is he?
Oh, he sent a chat. I'm happy to be here. Tell him that he's muted.
You have to, oh, all right. Let me, okay. Let me respond.
I can tell him.
Okay.
Oh, I can hear you and will call in shortly, he said.
Oh, okay.
So I guess he's going to be calling in.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so, yeah, I have the chat here just in case we have, well, let me just check the time so that I can, yeah, I'll get started in any case since for the people who are already here. And let's see as others join in. I know there were a few others who said they would be joining in, so we'll see. So let me officially get started. And I'm Jean Chen. For those of you who are on the phone and can't see the video, and we have June Fada, Cynthia, and Ian Wallace on the call, and I expect others to be joining us. So I'm going to do a short intro and give us the chance to frame sort of what this is all about, and then have all of you talk and discuss, because I do really want to hear everybody's concerns. As you know, I'm running for APA president, and I'm looking to have this Let's Talk series as a way to really have me listen to concerns and issues and to discuss areas in terms of the priorities that I'm doing, so that my overall theme is on leadership for a new APA and advancing psychology, with a focus on a slogan that I've used of leadership for change, that I really do think it's time for our change. Welcome, who just joined.
Hi, this is Edna on phone.
Hi, Edna. So that
Hi.
So I'm just getting started, and
Okay.
so I was saying my focus, as I said, is on leadership for change. Look at the many things that I think are needing of change for our profession, for APA, given the rapid growth and development that are happening in society and that we've faced as a discipline and within the association. So just a few rules is when you do speak, you would identify yourself with your first and last name. This is being recorded so that we can, I can capture and remember the things that you're sharing with me. And if we get a lot of background noise, then I would ask you to mute yourself when you're not speaking. But I do want to hear from everybody, and want to make sure everybody who wants to speak can. You can also ask questions in the chat box, which on my screen, I'm sharing the screen now, is in the lower left-hand corner, but you would look for it in, you can look for it, if it's not showing up, you can look for it under the task box below here. So that I just pointed that out is there. And if you don't get all your questions answered or comments raised, you can always contact me and we can follow up, and either through the email on my website, I have a Let's Chat box, and in other ways. So that I do have an administrator who will be on the call. Hi, Urging. And I have an administrator who will be on the call to help to monitor in case there are things that you have questions or goes wrong or so on. Like if your sound is not there and you need something, you could write in the chat and she or he will take care of it. He's Arthur. So let me get started. Let's see.
I don't know what happened to urging.
I think, yeah, I don't either. Let's see. Unless she just turned off her video.
Uh-huh.
That's the only thing. So this is what I said about what my slogan is in terms of leadership for change. And I think it is for the better, for good, you know, that we, and given all the issues in terms of what I was saying is going on within APA and within society, that I emphasize the principles of truth and trust as principles that we need to hold strong in terms of, as we talk about change and transformation and all, and the idea of technology, that we really need to manage it before it manages us, that it is a growing issue. It is like our meeting here is not possible without the technology that we didn't have, you know, even 5 years ago, at least in this form. So that people are worried about technology. People see, we have a lot of concerns with practice in terms of many things happening with technology, you know, about therapy and online and so on. So these are things that I think we should be mindful of and can be issues of concern as we talk. So that, oops, I went backwards. So, okay, so the two questions that I do want us to address in this, because I have 5 Zoom meetings, and they focus on different areas of concerns, I think, that I have as priorities, but also for our members that I do want to hear from you about, and what, and advancing our practice to serve a global and diverse society is one of them. So my 2 questions are, what are your concerns, and what can I do as APA president? So that, let me see who just joined us.
Hi, Jean. This is Ian Wallace. I just called in on the phone.
Okay, great. Thanks. And okay, so I was just introducing the 2 questions. What are your concerns, and what can I do as APA president? So, so here are some practice issues, and this is the main slide that I want to pay attention to. There are bullets of different areas of concern for practice that we can talk about, and we don't have to talk about all of them. We can talk about any other concerns and issues that you want to bring up, but this is as a start. So for those of you who are on the phone, I'll just read off there are 7 bullets. One is on training clinicians to be responsive to a diverse population, then reforming psychological services, promoting diverse clinical pathways to treatment, the master's issue, which is about the question of the status of master's level individuals in psychology, which is an issue being discussed for policy issues at APA Council. The clinical guidelines, which started with the PTSD, but there will be other clinical guidelines, and there has been discussion about that on listservs and so on. And the new APA structure that's being proposed in place of the APAPO will get folded, will no longer exist, and the new structure would be a C3, C6 for all of psychology, and not just advocacy for practice, but also for science and so on. And then lastly, on integrated care. So these are just a few of the issues that are in our forefront that would be ones that we would consider policy and other kinds of concerns. But let me open it up at this point for anyone, for each of you to share your concerns, ask questions, about my campaign in terms of what I'm supporting, and let's get started.
Okay. First of all, it's a pleasure to. This is June. I'm from New York. I'm the representative to APA from New York State. I have had the pleasure of working with Jean very closely over the last couple of years, pertaining more to New York than to APA, but I've had a real opportunity to have a collaboration with her, and the chance to really see the degree to which she has committed herself to core principles and values that so many of us find important, including transparency, diversity, and some really key value issues that are so important. And it's been a pleasure working with her as a colleague. I'm really glad to be involved in this practice webinar, because I think the issues that you have cited, Jean, are so important. But I do have a question to start that's really been on my mind. So given that, and it really relates to some of the key things that I've been interested in, including the clinical practice guidelines, which you mentioned before. But given that we as a practice community are broad-based and varied in our perspectives and approaches to treatment, and training and education, what should APA's role be in supporting this diversity within the framework of evidence-based science? Because it seems to me that there is a tremendous community of broad approaches, training, perspectives, and yet some of us are concerned, or some people I know are concerned, that APA is going in the opposite direction in terms of practice, that it's narrowing.
Right.
And so that would be a question that I would have.
I do agree with you on that. And there is the evidence-based practice document that actually was put out, I think about 10 years ago. And
Right.
it speaks to a broad-based recognition of looking at evidence-based practice that integrates the best in science, but but also being attentive to patient preferences, culture, and other dimensions. So that I actually have a statement, because that's one of the responses to one of the presidential statement responses. And that I think that using that as a basis, it seems as if what we have been doing in the new PTSD guidelines is narrowing the definition of what we mean by evidence-based, and narrowing it in terms of talking about science in a narrow way with regard to methodology as well as perspectives. And that I think that that's important for us to review with regard to how we create guidelines and how we address guidelines as we go forward, because this will be an issue for every single guideline that will come forth if we don't consider it. The second part is we have dichotomized, which I think is a real silo effect, on looking at clinical versus professional practice guidelines. We silo it one, and we have different groups to develop them. We silo it in how we define what is in clinical guidelines versus what is the domain of professional practice guidelines. And we silo it because within APA, there is two different entities that actually are responsible for those. So I think a real importance that if we follow what was said in the evidence-based practice report that was submitted to council, we really should be looking at them together. If we're going to have clinical guidelines that are separate from the practice guidelines, then we need to have a close interrelationship between them and make it clear that it is insufficient without consideration of the practice part if we're going to address the issues of diversity, both in terms of patient populations, in terms of perspective, cultures, and what works, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to hear you say that, because we have found, those of us who have been doing this, that it's not been moving in that direction. And when we try to introduce an item to council to provide a structure that would look at clinical guideline development, we were not backed. It didn't appear that we were backed by the structures in place that have been working on this.
Right.
So we're quite, I know a lot of people are quite concerned about it. So it's good to hear you say that you support the EBPPP of I think it was 2006.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So that, I think also the issue of diversity that plays into practice and all of the issues with regard to APA, because I think what the clinical guidelines issues has stirred up is it mirrors some of the ways in which we as APA don't promote and support the diversity of perspectives, and that we may have a more dominant group or perspective, and we end up then marginalizing the minority voices and the perspectives that are there, so that many groups then end up feeling marginalized. And in some sense, I know this is on practice, but our science colleagues also feel their voices are not heard.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, while this is about practice, it is also about the fact that we can support and advance practice, but it's not to the detriment or marginalizing of our science colleagues. And there are ways we can and should be doing that. And I also would be welcoming any questions, concerns about how we might do that. So I am looking for suggestions from you. So someone said, so I think if you would like to comment on what your thoughts were about that.
That was me that said, sorry. But I'm nodding over here in agreement with a lot of what's being said. Oh, this is Cynthia. Yeah, this is Cynthia de las Fuentes.
Yes.
And I'm nodding in agreement with a lot of this. One of one of my concerns that I've shared with Jean and other people along the way is how science has felt disenfranchised. And so during this conversation, I was wondering to myself about what was Susan Bennett Johnson's intention in terms of creating these and mandating or authorizing the sole focus on RCTs and terms of and that kind of thing. And I don't know if it was part of her intention was to integrate, welcome back, to try to make APA seem more friendly to science and to science folks with this. I know she was a health psych person and maybe she was trying to lead us in that direction as well. And so in this conversation, as I was listening, I was thinking about all these different things and also thinking about the prerogative of the president to set an agenda. And that's where Jean comes in. Because in thinking about this theme, Jean, you have a prerogative to set your own agenda. And you can say, I think that there are some good things that these initiatives from a predecessor had, and we want to further some of this, including more science and whatnot, and expanding scope. And also, one of the things that was missing, that we're discovering, is we're missing the voices of people of color, let's say, or the science that comes from empirically validated treatments as opposed to random controlled studies and whatnot. And that's one of the things that we learn when we do something. And 3 years from now or 5 years from now, somebody's going to be saying, well, one of the things that we learned from Jean's initiatives were blah, 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 blah. And so let's modify, expand, let's enhance, let's take a look at this. That's what I was about.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And I think you put it in a nice perspective that I would take forward, is that I have set up a science advisory committee, and it includes scientists or researchers, in the research community. I've also tried to make that advisory committee diverse in representing the different way of science or types of areas. And I see that or intend to use that as a group to support, give me feedback, input, advise me on different areas of how do we bring in the voices of science into all the different perspectives, so that it is very fitting to what you're describing, Cynthia. And moreover, I think the issue that you described is sort of what some of the, what I call the siloing, that those areas seem to have been relegated to the professional practice guidelines. And the emphasis is on the RCTs as randomized controlled trials as being the science and the only science. And I think I do know that is not, while that's important and it's true, that is a privileging of science in a certain way that is not consistent with how it really represents where we are, in the quote, in the world, in our discipline. So that I think, as you say, that to create, if I were to be president, I would have the prerogative to set an agenda, and very much along those ways as looking at ways in which we would, not just for practice or clinical guidelines, but in general, how do we promote a climate and projects, initiatives, whatever you might say, that does exactly what you're describing. And I know that others have shared with me about the importance of translational science, so that when we look at how science says something or does something and it doesn't translate into, well, what does it mean for practice and policy and service and vice versa. And I think the key about that is that it's not just that science has something to offer and can tell us about things, but that practice or practitioners also have the expertise based on their expertise in the field, on the ground, and so on. And we need to value that as a knowledge as well. And that, so that if we can set an agenda that promotes that aspect, I think it would further, you know, some of the, what I see as important to the field. And I think it seems to be what you're talking about, Cynthia. So I would want some very specific things, you know, if I, you know, if I were to be president, in terms of what can we actually do? What would be a project that would promote that and start that kind of stuff off? It says my.
Hi, this is Edna.
Hi, Edna.
Hi there, Edna Esnall, and I am happy that I'm a part of this conversation in hearing how, Jean, you are creating. Oh, let me back up. I think the 6 issues that you talked about are important practice issues. When you had talked about creating a science committee, one of the things that came up for me was, well, I would love to see a practice committee as part of your presidential experience. And I'm thinking about when I was on the committee on women, there was a gender report that was worked on through the CWP, and one of the information that we saw was most people going through psychology are choosing to be clinicians at this time. And so I would love to have you create a diverse committee to help set the agendas for the future of psychology, as well as you having a committee for science.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the second part is what you can do as president. My thought is having, you know, because there's this divide between science and practice, having both committees as part of your process as president.
Okay. And what would you have, would you have a focus as to what this committee might address in terms of practice?
I think that there's a lot of issues that are important, like the ones that you mentioned. Other two that I think about is, you know, how do we as psychologists continue to educate the public about our role and leadership and how we are different from other mental health practitioners? Mm-hmm. Is one area that I'm thinking. I think how do we as psychology continue to be at the forefront of being out there and continuing to have the education for the public? The other area that I think of is, you know, this has been longstanding, but the psychopharmacology piece. How do psychologists who choose to want to prescribe or help unprescribe for clients who may not want to see multiple providers? Mm-hmm. That's an issue that cuts across many different diverse contexts.
Right, right.
I think the education piece is really important, and I think that having a diverse committee to help set the future. I think that, you know, part of the process could be what are some of the areas this committee wants to focus on for practice during your term.
Mm-hmm. No, those are really good questions, because I think they're buried, not buried, but they're they're inherent in the issues that I listed on the screen, in that that's exactly what we need to be thinking about, is that how does, as you say, psychology differentiate itself, and promote that, because that was one of the problems with the clinical guidelines, is that for PTSD was that it emphasized we'll do what the Institute of Medicine suggests and go that way. Now, it may be a hard battle, but there could be ways to consider, yes, but at the same time, we are distinct as a profession. That's always been the issue with psychologists and MDs, with the notion of that's played out in our field. Are we real doctors or not? And do we follow the medical profession or not? And I think the issue is really that we are our own profession, and there are similarities, and we work in healthcare settings, but there is something we need to distinguish, and that's at the core of the master's issue that you're referencing. Is the notion of, will we water down the PhD if we have master level practitioners of some kind, or that not if we have them, we already have them, but rather.
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that that's an issue in itself, where, there's this academic push because the master's program funds the PhD program, where they're having, hundreds of master's level students come in, and then there's, less than 10 PhD doctoral level. I think that there's a lot of important issues. At the same time, I think what I'm wanting to push is, yes, these are issues, but how do we continue to promote, educate, distinguish our leadership, specialty, profession, so that continuously people are seeing what we're doing and understanding the differences. Because I don't want to look at it, I don't think that it would be helpful to look at it as a, what's the word? Not debate, but like a fight. I think our fight is to distinguish ourselves and continue to promote and be out there in the forefront so people understand who we are and how we're different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that's a great summary and, quote, mega issue, if you will, of what we should be doing, because as I heard you speak, is that issue comes up in every single of the practice issues that are raised, and
exactly, and and it doesn't have to be a fight. It could be our fight to promote. That's it.
Yeah.
It's about identity. It's an identity discussion. How do we distinguish ourselves? How do we identify ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I wonder, I'm just curious, Jean, when you say the second question, what can I do as your president, as someone who is interested in seeing how, like Cynthia said, that Susan Bennett created this science piece, how many past presidents have had a practice on committee as part of their, I don't know what it's called, committees that they've had as president?
Mm-hmm.
And you could be the first if there hasn't been a committee, because of the gender report that more people are choosing to go into practice. And that's what the data says. because of this, I am choosing to make sure that I have a committee to put forth, because the numbers show that people are going into this area. We need to make sure that we are setting the agenda for the future of psychology.
Right. Now, I think that's an excellent point, because I think, and this is my opinion, that the reason why there has been some science committees but never been a practice committee is the inherent assumption or truths, if you will, that we make, that science doesn't have a voice, science feels marginalized, and practitioners who do, as a fact, make up about 2/3 of, our membership, are already dominant. But I think the point that you make is that we can do this, and we should focus on this without having to marginalize and disrespect or dis science as
Exactly.
as
I mean, if you look at
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because if you look at the history of psychology, if you think of like how the awards are distributed, they're more geared towards academicians. While the numbers show that people are choosing the clinical practice, if you look at the awards through APA, there's more academician awards than practice awards.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, the other thing, excuse me, this is Cynthia again. The other thing, was it during, Jean, you might remember this, was it during Melba's year that we passed a resolution on psychotherapy effectiveness?
Yeah, that I don't remember, but
we remember that we did do it, and it was fairly recently.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I'll look into
that's to Edna's. Yeah, that's to Edna's point. That, I mean, I don't want to contradict my own statement earlier about saying that it's good to welcome back science and to make sure that they feel at home. But I also agree with what Edna's saying in terms of, I think that there's been some assumptions that have been made all along that haven't really been, period. There's just been assumptions made all along, and that's all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, but
you're
not contradicting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you're not contradicting that, because I think Edna's point is that we can do this, and there's those assumptions made, but we can do this without pushing our science, members away. That it's not us or them, and that's the mentality we have oftentimes.
Yeah, that's not the intention.
Yeah.
I wonder if another perspective, though, is that although 2/3 of the members of APA are practitioners, we have seen a decline in practitioner membership. And there's the question of, what can be done about that. And also, we have a new practice organization. And the question arises as to whether or not this is a practice organization that will robustly and sufficiently support practitioners in APA and in the practitioner community that's part of the organization. And that's, that seems to me to be also a very vital question. What direction is the practice organization going in? And
a new practice chair, a new practice lead,
a new practice chair who all the, I know him minimally, but I do know that he's very accomplished and he's done a great deal, and he's very smart and energetic. But he also has a bent towards a particular view of science that is not necessarily in line with this sense of diversity that we've been talking about.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, his perspective on the clinical practice guidelines was very strongly in favor of the Academy of Medicine, which is what Jean was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is not to say he's not going to be more broadly representative, but I think it's important for us to remember that part of our job is going to be to keep the organization's focus on what we believe is going to support the practice community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that they're mutually exclusive, of course.
Right.
What do you mean? What's mutually exclusive?
I'm saying it's not to say that they're not mutually exclusive. Oh, those double negatives. Science does not mean that practice, that we can't, that
if we focus on practice, it doesn't mean we're not focusing on science. Right?
Correct. Thank you, Jean. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, I understand that. But
Yeah.
Where they come together, in the areas where they come together, including in the clinical practice guidelines, we have to create a sense of integration.
Right. And I think that's the part that we don't do, and we don't do well, is that we have always focused on a we, they, or, a this or that, rather than, the integration, and that if we support this, it doesn't mean we don't support that, so. And that's where the notions of translational science comes from, the direction of wanting to bring in science's voice and so on and so forth. But it's just that we need it going both ways. And I think that's what I think Edna picked up as, why hasn't there really ever been a practice committee? Because we look at those who are quote, marginalized or felt to be marginalized, and that it may just be an assumption, but we don't look at the other side, so, and that's where we do need to be looking at that from both sides, so I think those are good points. And it's a mega issue, so that we would want that if we can communicate that as our way of working, and our way of, how the direction of the association and how we do business, then I think it would help to form change and so on. So that I think specifically with regard to the new practice director, or he's a chief now, not a director, that we would, actually that might help to have a group have a statement that speaks to that as an issue. Because in fact, I'm thinking that the Science Advisory Committee, as a result of the Zoom meetings, came up with Craig will be crafting a statement about science. So that's making me think that maybe we should do the same, and that if June could take the lead in helping to craft a statement about that, it's something that I can include in my campaign and put it out there as, this is what we want to be seeing. Because I think that is very major.
Well, that would be a good step in the direction of bringing this issue to the attention of people.
Because then,
especially coming from you.
Yeah. Because so if we have a statement, so if June, if you could help craft something, and we could use, there's some rich discussion on this. This is being taped, so if you need the tape to recall some of it. I can
Okay.
provide that to you. And yeah, I'd be happy to use that. It's sort of along what Edna was saying along, and Cynthia, well, all of you, in terms of how do we make a statement and use that as a prerogative for an agenda going forward, you know, that that would help to advance practice and the profession.
Mm-hmm. A statement about practice
Yeah.
that reflects
Right.
your vision.
Right,
of-
right. And that one that emphasizes that we're not talking about not welcoming science and not that, but, you know, some of the things that are positive. And I think we need to state that, because otherwise we will have people who will say, well, what about science? You know, so we want a
Right.
statement that comes from a practice standpoint, but acknowledges science as, you know, important partner, in the, in the mix.
Yeah, well,
It's kind of, it has to be, sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to, this is Cynthia de las Fuentes again. It has to be more than an important partner. It has to be foundational alliance, because science informs our practice.
Uh-huh.
We're just not flying by the seat of our pants here. We know what we're doing because of our science.
Yeah. Good point. No, that's a good point. So, no, that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
And a very nice suggestion, that,
Mm-hmm.
because we take it for granted, that, well, it's all about practice, and you don't care about science and so on. So that happens,
Mm-hmm.
all too often.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess
and there's these artificial pitting one against the other, and I think that's a shame, because it's artificial dichotomy there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
I would be interested in seeing the statement that the advisory committee in science comes up with
yes,
as well. I think if we could coordinate those two, that would
be a good point. I have a call scheduled in with Craig. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is if we have a three-way call, that we can talk about having two statements and have that be coordinated in, just from the get-go. So,
Yes. I think that's a good idea,
yeah,
because I think that's what's missing
right.
right now. It's divisive rather than
Right.
moving towards a collaboration.
Yes. No, I like that very much, because I think that's exactly what I've used the word silo many times in some of the statements that I talk about. And I see that, and it's a problem. I see it as divisive. I see it as not, we saw that happen with each of the issues that have, that I have bulleted here, where the people start to make it divisive and dichotomize it, so that if we did it, we recognize the difference, but we coordinate and integrate that, it's not, it's, as what was Cynthia's word? A foundational alliance.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that down. That was great, Cynthia.
Yeah, I like that very much.
Mm-hmm.
So that, any other things? I think this is, we still have 10 minutes, but I feel this has been very productive.
Yeah, it's been very helpful to me.
Yeah, very helpful to me. And I think that...
we were only supposed to be on here for 10 minutes?
Oh, no.
Or did
no,
you
no,
say
the other way. No, the other way. It's
We
7.
only have 10 minutes? Oh.
No, it's 7.
Because there's one more thing I want to talk about, if that's okay, Jean.
Oh, that's fine. I was just pointing to the time that it was 7:50. Well,
Oh,
for me, it's 7:50. I'm sorry. I'm a different day, different hour. But for me, it's 7:50. For you, it's 5 o'clock.
I'm so
or
sorry.
5:50. So
Yeah, it
I was
is.
just pointing out that we have
but-
10 minutes left, not that we're only supposed to be on for 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Phew! I thought I overstayed my welcome. But there is one more thing that I wanted to bring up, and it's the issue of the teletherapy and the passport issue across states and everything. I just, the nurses were able to do it. I think that we need to be able to do it. I think it's there's this artificial kind of argument that says that with regards to the master's issue that that I heard going around during our last council meeting when we approved the accreditation and accepted the guidelines is that we need to be educating and having control over the masters because we need to be working with our rural areas and in high need areas, and that there aren't enough people in there. The fact of the matter is that they're not going to be there anyway. They're already being trained. They're already being licensed, and they're not there anyway. What will get there is if we can do more teletherapy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent point, Cynthia.
And in order for us to be able to do that, we need to have some of this reciprocity. The state, right now I'm licensed in Texas. I could be in Australia and still seeing my patients in Texas, so long as they're in Texas and residents of Texas, right? And so, but I'm in Austin and I cannot go to Odessa, which is 3.5 hours away, even once a week because it's prohibitive. Right. And so, but they're insured, but the only way, the DOD and Medicare has teletherapy, allows teletherapy. Some Medicaid depends, and you have to go through all these hoops and whatnot, but Jean, if we can get that, I have these fantasies that one day I'll be elected to Congress and I'll champion that. But if you can do it,
I love that.
But if you can do it, Jean, I would much rather you do it than me through your presidency.
I think that is such an important point. And, the other thing too is, when Cynthia said the nurses did it, well, the nurses are able to prescribe medication and unprescribe. The nurses are able to do telehealth.
Well, some nurses are.
Why?
Yeah.
Okay, some nurses are. Why is not psychology on the same plane? That's where I think the education and a committee to move forth these issues is real critical. We're missing out on some opportunities, basically.
But what you're saying and what I'm saying is that we're also missing out on being able to deliver services to high need areas because of it. And so that's the thing, Jean. Yeah. We've been talking a lot about a guild, our guild and our science and whatnot, but this is about a public interest issue. It's really about getting services out to people who need it, and in areas that we and master's level people are not in. Yeah,
right.
You said it really clearly and specifically and importantly, Cynthia. That was I totally 110% agree.
I'm a little confused, Cynthia. You're saying the nurses got telehealth
so the nurses,
across 50 states?
Yeah, nurses. Yeah, well, so what nurses were able to do is that they can go from state to state without having to retake their board.
Ah, okay.
I mean, it's so interesting to me because it's a state licensure issue. Each state has its own.
Yeah, but the nurses were able to go federal.
How did they do that? Do you know?
How did they?
I don't know how they did that, but they did it. So the nurses were able to do that. ASPPB has been working on something that they've been calling the passport or something, SIPAC, type of thing. some states have some reciprocity, but the fact of the matter is there's two issues with that. One is they have reciprocity, but you have to be in their state to deliver the services. You can't do the teletherapy, because I tried that. I had a client who was here in Texas, and Louisiana had a reciprocity. She moved to Louisiana. I applied and gave my money to their board so that I can get licensed over there. And they said, oh, by the way, you need to have a storefront in Louisiana.
Mhm.
No, I'm not going to have a storefront in Louisiana. And so that's that one issue. And then the other issue is that many of the states are starting to eliminate, the requirements now are starting to change. And if we can get in front of that, like Texas, we recently got rid of the oral exam. California had gotten rid of it, a couple of decades ago, it seems like. I don't know if it was that long, but it feels like it was that long ago. The different CE requirements are different, and that kind of stuff. And if we can get ahead of that, of all of those changes,
Right.
to make some sort of uniformity, then we can do what the nurses did. Because there are Filipino nurses who are being trained in Philippines and come over here because their model is the same training for nurses over there as it is over here, and they did that deliberately, and they can go anywhere in the United States.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. And that, let me just add, is that I have one Zoom meeting that's focused on technology. This would be a perfect issue to be talking about and having an agenda for, so that because I think I agree with you that we do not make use of technology in ways. Again, I reference sort of my statements. That sometimes I wonder if it gets too obtuse. Is that when I've talked about technology to do good instead of technology to do bad, that's part of my slogan about leadership for change, leadership to do good, because we look at what has been wrong with technology, where the invasion of privacy and confidentiality and all this kind of stuff, but we don't talk about how it really can help and be used to advance our profession.
Absolutely. Jean, do you know that people around the world are more likely to have a smartphone than they are to have access to a latrine?
Wow.
I am not kidding. I am not kidding. There have been some studies that have shown that in the United States, people who are homeless have the same access to social media as college students. That means they have to have a smartphone.
Yeah.
So that's the delivery of services, access in that way.
Yeah.
But Jean, this is also, it's a technology issue, but it's also a legislative regulatory issue.
Yes.
And
and I don't know how I don't know how the nurses did it, but the nurses
have to find that out.
But I think that's, to me, where, in terms of, I like Cynthia's prerogative agenda, and so on, that if...
It's not mine, it's your prerogative, Jean.
Yeah, it would be my prerogative.
Your agenda. That's right.
Yeah, I'm getting the words mixed up, but you're right. That if I were president and so on, that to set a task force or, a committee or whatever, to begin to look into this and see.
That's right. And to coordinate with ASPPB and whatever. Yes.
Right.
And the feds. So the things is that the feds already do it. So the DOD and Medicare, they already do it.
Right. And that would be something to look at, because then we can bring in the expertise of checking. And that's where, you can have APA staff help to figure that out, in terms
Absolutely.
of pursuing that legislatively, regulatory, and so on. Because we've always been pushed with the fact that state license and all is, or licenses by state, and the issue of reciprocity is with the state rather than, national. So we've been, the borders have been a problem. But that's why the technology. So Cynthia, if you can join the Zoom meeting, because Marlene Mayhew is the lead or the chair on that part.
When is that one?
That is in, let me see. That's the one, I think in July. I'll send you the actual date.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you'll get a notice on it, but I'll send that to you because Marlene Mayhew, who is very big on technology, health,
Yeah.
is, she would love this issue, and I think that if we can create, and that would be very concrete as a bigger issue to be concerned about and to make some real major change. I mean, that would be a real advancement. So, yeah, so I like that. Well, I think we reached our time, and I really enjoyed the productive discussion and contribution with everyone. And Arthur's been on standby to anticipate any problems or to help, and I think it's gone smoothly. So I thank him.
Thank you for hosting this. I appreciate it, Jean.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jean.
And Arthur wanted to say something. Go ahead.
It's August 16th, the technology Zoom meeting.
Oh, August 16th.
At 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, good.
7 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so this is a great point to expand on in terms of the technology one. And if we can do something with that, I really would support that. So, well, I want to thank everyone who's been on the phone and on the call. And it really does help me look at many of these issues, and has expanded that. And I will be sure to both support it and include it in my quote campaign, and if I become president and all. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Jean. Thanks, Jean.
Thank you, Jean.
Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.